Okay, and we are live. Thank you for joining the next episode of the Go Fast Academy. Today, we're actually going to talk a lot about really cool stuff, which is how to keep your customers engaged. If you are part of the startup community, if you've started companies yourself, you know that one of the top metrics people talk about is how many users do you have. And somehow, the more users you have, the more respectable you are in the eyes of your investors and competitors. However, what people don't talk about is how many active daily, weekly, or monthly users you have. And the focus of today's episode is to discuss some of the metrics and strategies you can use to increase that customer retention. So let's get going. Before we begin, this is a part of the meetup group called Go Fast Academy. And the main goal of this meetup is to help people like yourselves turn ideas into working businesses that are revenue generating from day one. There are a lot of businesses out there that start on kind of like a future value idea where they hope to raise money and eventually exit and get rich at that point. However, as we know, 9 startups out of 10 fail for many reasons. And I help companies create revenue generating businesses so that they do not depend on this big exit to actually build a successful business. So feel free to join me on Facebook and Twitter to follow the latest news. I post some news and insights, pretty regularly. About myself, I know some of you guys have been on my previous broadcasts, but I know we have some new faces here. So today, just real quick, my name is Vlad Khomutov, and I am a serial entrepreneur and the founder of the Go Fast Academy. I've been designing and building products for a long time, almost 2 decades, and I've learned a lot from building products for large companies as well as starting a bunch of technology startups of my own, as well as helping others go to market. And as a result of all of that experience and learning, I've created Go Fast Academy to share with you guys the lessons of the best practices of what makes some of these ideas more successful, so that you can basically replicate and implement these best practices, so that if it's your first business, you have a much higher chance of going revenue positive on your first try. And the entire process of the Go Fast program is to take you step by step from an idea to a business. Many people want to jump straight to this last step and just throw all their money on building their product, their MVP. However, what they don't realize is that, especially if you're a first-time founder, a lot of your assumptions are wrong, and you simply lack the practice of executing your idea in a way that will actually make it sticky in the marketplace. So I've broken it down into a step-by-step, 9-step process that actually takes you from idea to a business in a very predictable way, where each next step is like a domino effect, right? So each next step is based on the success of the previous step. So you're investing your time and money into growing a business and not just investing into funding a big gamble. And today, obviously, we're going to focus on the retention side of that equation. And as I've alluded to a few minutes ago, people all they care about is the signups. How many users have signed up for your app, your service, or your podcast, or your broadcast, whatever it is. And very few people actually think, let alone measure, how to actually keep people engaged over time. And as you may know, there's actually a lot of statistics out there that talks about kind of active daily users, active monthly users. This is especially evident in the world of downloadable apps. So if you are in the business of building an app, you should definitely listen in super attentively. Doesn't matter how many users you have. If you run an app, 80% of your mobile users are gonna drop off within 30 days. So if you have 100 people signed up on your first day and you're like super ecstatic about it, well, guess what? Only about 10, 15, maybe 20 people tops will be still using this app 30 days from now. So this is a big problem for, obviously, companies that are trying to build revenue generating businesses. If you're more in the business of kind of like future value exit, network growth type of thing, you may get away with this low active users value hoping to kind of raise Series B, Series C, get to that $100 million valuation, and then sell the technology. But the reality is it's a lot easier to do things right from step one. And this is what we're going to be focusing on today. And I've broken it down into kind of 4 parts. I almost want to structure it with the end in mind. So we're going to start with looking at the cohort analysis of one of my properties on Google Analytics that already generates a decent amount of traffic. And then we're going to work our way back to see, what are the steps we can do, what are the tactics we can implement to actually understand what's going on at the end and help those metrics improve. And the first part is the cohort analysis. And really what the cohort analysis means is that you're tracking like a group of users that have signed up within a short time period of each other, and you're tracking their behavior of how they're processing through a customer journey, whether it's a website or an app, over time, right? It can be several days, can be a week, can be a month, whatever it is. The important thing is that you kind of track how that works. So we're going to take a look right now at how that works and what you can do to make it work better. And obviously, why are we doing this? Obviously, we want to increase the value of each customer that brings business to us. And when implemented properly, this model creates what I call perpetual value model. And as you can see here, it's the whole idea of implementing these strategies is to form a new habit in your users, in your customers' mind. Then, whenever they feel a certain emotional trigger, they need to think about using your app instead of the competitors. And at the end, we're actually going to look at some of the examples of how, some of the big guys that you very well know use these tactics to create very successful customer retention journeys. So let's look at cohort analysis. If you have a website, a blog, or a web app, and you don't use Google Analytics, first thing you got to do is you got to start using Google Analytics. It's a very powerful tool, gives you lots of insights. And one of these insights is the cohort analysis. Right now it's in beta on Google Analytics, but it's still very useful. I'm sure it's going to get better as we go. So basically, it allows us to see how people behave in groups. And on the next slide, we'll see how basically this stuff breaks down. Like I mentioned, this is one of my properties on Google Analytics. It's a blog about fitness and well-being, and you can see that it's already getting, a fairly decent amount of traffic and number of unique users. All of this growth is completely organic, completely SEO-based, organic, word-of-mouth type of growth. So you can see that it's a pretty good number for a blog that's kind of flying under the radar. And the breakdown of new visitors versus returning is almost 75-25. Well, it's actually 78% new sessions. So you can see that about almost a quarter of users comes back later to do something. The chart at the bottom is what that cohort analysis breakdown looks like in Google Analytics. And the important part here is you can see that basically number of users signed up per day in the all sessions column. And then as we go to the columns to the right, we can see on day 1, day 2, day 3, etc., how many of those users returned and did something to stay active. And here you can see a pretty radical drop-off between day 1 and day 2. And then on day 3, it's even less. And then day 4, it's even less. And basically on day 5, none of these 1,267 users came back to the website. That gives us a very important insight into how people use this blog, right? It allows us to create informed decisions about how we might want to change some of the behavioral design behind possibly, attaining users' email address so that we can follow up with them through newsletters, or maybe creating, multi-part blog articles that span multiple days so that there is more incentive for people to come back. In this particular example, we can see that on day 1, so on the following day after these users became new users, 2.13% came back. It's a pretty low number, but it still gives us an idea that out of 1,267 people, 2% came back to do something else. And you can actually see on that November 21st, 198 users signed up, and 3.54% of them came back. And then on the following day, out of those users, 2.5% came back again. Now, why is this important? Why is this particular November 21st group is important to us? Because we can go back to our blog and we can see what we posted on November 21st. Because obviously, out of the 7 days worth of data, this day was the best, was performing the best in terms of kind of keeping users engaged for 3 days, actually, in this particular case, which is not bad for, a blog article that gives out free fitness advice. So here's an example of the end state that we want to achieve. Obviously, every time we go back to reading the cohort analysis and doing these insights, the main idea is to see if we can increase these numbers from 2% to 5% to 10 to 15, ideally to 100%. I'm pretty sure that Facebook has a very high cohort analysis retention percentage here. Unfortunately, I don't have insights into their analytics, but you know what? This is definitely something worth Googling and see what kind of cohort analysis Facebook shares with the world. Now, let's take a look at how we can actually break it down and build sort of like an experience funnel that allows us to build better retention. First thing I want to look at is what I call behavioral design. And the important thing to kind of understand when we design for behavioral responses is that it's deeply emotional, it's deeply irrational, it's deeply based on the instance we're in and how we feel in that instance. Great marketers and great advertisers, they understand this behavioral design really, really well. They're really able to tap into our psychology and press on some of these buttons to make us buy certain products. Cars, I think cars is a great example. We have budget cars, we have kind of, family cars, we have sports cars and luxury vehicles. And how these vehicles are advertised to us is very different based on what kind of audience they're going after. And car manufacturers and agencies that create marketing campaigns for them, they really understand their audience really well. Obviously, the upper hand they have is that, most of these guys, they've been building cars for decades. In case of Ford, over 100 years. So they have a lot of that historic data and statistical analysis to go back to and kind of see how certain demographics respond to certain marketing messages. In our case, especially, if you're a first-time founder, you have no idea about what kind of responses you're going to get back. So it's very important to kind of be agile and experiment with a variety of messaging through A/B split testing, through a variety of paid and organic marketing campaigns. But this is a topic for another story. Today, we just want to talk about the kind of the emotional, the psychology, the behavioral design part of it. So important part is to understand that people make purchasing decision. And when I say purchasing decision, I do not necessarily mean only exchange of money. Downloading an app is also, in a sense, a purchasing decision, even if it's free, because we are investing something in hope of getting something in return. So in this case, it's our time, it's our effort, it's our focus and attention. If it's a free app, if you're offering a paid service or a paid app, obviously that investment is very tangible. So we need to tap into how people feel and what their emotional motivations are to actually download this app or sign up for your service. As a product designer, you are the listener. It is your number one job to understand what your customers want, how they live, what they think about, what kind of movies they watch, what kind of dreams they have. Are they aspiring to become millionaires, or they're okay being middle-class families living in the suburbs? All of these insights, they kind of, let you step into the world a little bit. And as a UX designer, we've done user research where we literally follow people around as their day goes, and we just shadow them. We see, what they eat, how they work. We go to their work. We stand by their desk. We see what they're doing. All of these allows us to kind of imagine what the life of that customer is. Many of us create products to solve our own problems. A lot of entrepreneurs approach me and say, hey, I have this idea for this app. It's going to do A, B, and C. It's going to solve this problem. And I'm doing it because I myself have this problem. And I imagine a lot of people in the world have the same problem. Now, as a kind of like a motivation to start a business, that's a pretty good starting point. However, assuming that everybody else in the world have the same psychology as you is a bit of a stretch. And even though people who may have a similar problem out there in the world may find your app or web service useful, it doesn't necessarily mean that how you would market it to yourself is going to work when you market it to other people. So it's very important to do user research and understand how people feel before they make that purchasing decision. Now, obviously, some immediate benefits of how behavioral design can actually create a better user experience for our products. If we understand our users really well, we can present them with better choices. If we have, for example, our pricing page and we have our basic, premium, and enterprise price points, if we understand what kind of background, what kind of income bracket our customers are coming from, it will allow us to price these products better. So, we might want to start with basic that is free, with premium that is like, $5 a month, and with enterprise at $99 a month, if we know that our customers make with that, $30,000 to $50,000 a year, for example, right? I'm just throwing these numbers out there. However, if we're targeting the Lamborghini owners of the world, the same pricing points could be a little bit different. It also allows us, because we understand some of the psychology that goes behind it, it also allows us to create a better breakdown of features that goes into each one of these buckets. It's no surprise that Starbucks offers 3 beverage sizes. They've done their research. There's a lot of research about how people choose. And if we only have 2 choices, let's say if Starbucks only had, the small and the large, people would gravitate towards small, because in their eyes, they're getting better value out of this. It's less expensive, but they're still getting almost the same amount of water as the large. However, as soon as you introduce a third choice, right? So we have in Starbucks, we have tall, grande, and venti. As long as we introduce the third venti choice, people will gravitate towards the middle choice. They will naturally gravitate towards the grande size, the medium choice. And again, if you understand some of this behavioral psychology that goes behind it, it allows you to create much better user experience that caters to this natural behavior that people have. Very powerful stuff. Number 2 is obviously creating a sense of connection between your brand, your product, and your customers. On the previous slide, I said that a well-designed product behaves like your customer starts a sentence and your product finishes it. Obviously, that's a bit of a stretch, but I think guys at Siri spend many tens of hundreds of millions of dollars creating that artificial intelligence that kind of gets close. And I think Google now is trying to do the same. And as we go further and further into the future, all of this machine learning, all of that kind of artificial intelligence algorithms that people are creating today will effectively try to compensate for that inability of us as designers to envision what the user wants. So if we do our best in understanding what people require in any particular moment within the flow, we should be able to respond appropriately by creating experiences that work well. For example, imagine if we have a price point that sells, a premium version of our product, and let's say like the price point is a little bit higher than maybe the user would like to pay at that time. We might want to put some sort of code on the page that if we detect that the user is like lingering there for more than, let's say, 30 seconds, all of a sudden we realize that their abandonment probability is going to skyrocket, because obviously, they're kind of on the fence. They haven't decided if they want to like really make that purchasing decision. So if we know that that period of inactivity has been like, let's say, more than 30 seconds, maybe we trigger some sort of user experience action on the front end that allows them to chat with the sales representative, or maybe proactively says, hey, hi, my name is John. I am the sales guy at company X. Can I help you with anything, right? So kind of proactively help them, push them gently over that fence so that they make that decision. This is what I mean by, your customer starts the sentence and we finish it with a well-designed experience. Number 3 is persuasion. Obviously, one of the key points of how we convert visitors into users, and also how we keep users coming back for more. If we understand the behavioral science that goes behind this, we can create experiences, copy visuals, videos, presentations, words, button labels, etc., that basically gently guide users along the path. And the keyword here is gently guiding. We don't want to push people. We don't want to appeal to fear or any of the negative emotions. Ideally, we want to appeal to positive emotions, something that creates a sense of flow and reduces a sense of friction. And this is obviously guiding people by presenting them with the best choices is basically the best way to accomplish that. And then last but not least is simplicity. Achieving simplicity in digital product design is incredibly complicated. If any of you on the call have tried creating, fairly sophisticated digital products, and by the way, sophistication and simplicity are not the same things. They're not even in the same category. Let's say a really well-made steak is simple as a dish, but it's also very sophisticated because it has this unique flavor and an atmosphere set around it at a steakhouse. Whereas a KFC bucket of chicken wings is also simple, as a meal. It's a very simple meal. However, it's far from sophisticated. It's rather crude. So if we understand our customers, and by the way, this is actually kind of going back to that behavioral design and understanding our customers. Don't try to sell me, $50 chicken wings at a steakhouse. Nobody's going to buy it. It's the wrong setting. It's the wrong attitude. It's the wrong price point. It just, just because people go to the steakhouse, they expect to pay premium money for their meal, doesn't mean that they're going to go with that crude meal just because they're in the setting. We need to understand that context really well as well. At the same time, trying to sell steak at KFC is not going to work for the same reasons, right? People go to KFC when they want cheap, no frills, no hassle kind of quick food. So product design is absolutely the same thing. So let's take a look at basically the infinite value creation model. And this is adapted from Nir Eyal, which is the author of the book called Hook. And I will post these links in the meetup after, but I highly recommend this book. This is behavioral science of the highest order. It's definitely a book that you might want to read. And Nir himself is a brilliant guy. He really understands how to get into users' heads. So reading some of his articles is also a great idea if you want to get better at modeling these behaviors. It starts with the trigger. And a trigger can be either internal or external, and it's all about, bubble coming up in your thoughts saying, I need to do X. And it needs to continue to very simple action, and there has to be like zero friction or as little friction as possible between the trigger and the action. And as soon as people perform that action, we need to give them an immediate reward. There needs to be that instant sense of gratification. And afterwards, the next step is the most important step in creating that customer retention. We need to reward people in such a way that allows them to invest something, their interest, their curiosity, their anticipation into the next trigger. And this is what creates this kind of infinite loop where people come back to your app over and over and over again. This single slide is probably the most important slide for you guys to remember from this presentation, because even visually, if you can memorize it and then go back to it later, you need to remember to create user experiences that tap into these behaviors, to press the right triggers, and then flow through these 4 stages. And we're going to break down each one of these stages right now just to kind of take a quick look at this. The first one is the trigger, and they can be either external or internal. You're walking down the street, you see a huge billboard for a sushi place, you feel hungry, that's a trigger, right? It could be a message flashing in your inbox that you got in your email. It could be the infamous, red circle in your Facebook notifications. And they can be emotional, right? So the trigger can be, I feel bored, I want to do something to entertain myself. And I mean, it's kind of funny and sad at the same time, but as you walk down the street in any major city, or watch people sit in the park, or even watch people sit in a restaurant, they're scrolling through their phones, right? They're not talking to each other, they're actually engaged with with the apps, with their inboxes, whatever it is, right? For better or for worse, their emotional triggers have been catered to by technology more than they have been catered to by other human beings that we are surrounded by. And it's an interesting aspect of the times that we live in, and definitely something to consider as we go forward. And we're going to break this down even more as we go to more of an example. Social acceptance, also a very powerful trigger. I cannot say enough about the value of social proof. The old adage of driving off a cliff because everybody else is like doing it. This actually works. People will actually follow other people. This has been proven time and time again. If you can show me that 57 of my friends are using this app, I will be more likely to download it as well than if you just say, hey, look, this app is used by millions of people worldwide. The first one is very specific. It actually connects me to people I know. It creates that sense of social proof. The other one is rather abstract. It's like, yeah, okay, well, there's like a million strangers out there. It doesn't mean anything to me. And third one, I put hunger here, but it can be any physical emotion. I don't know, like if my muscles are sore, maybe I'll think about buying that cream to put on my muscles, so that hot and cold band thing that what's his name, the basketball player, used to advertise on the TV, right? So all these triggers, they prompt us to take an action. Let's look at some of these actions. The important part here is this action needs to be really, really, really simple. There needs to be as little friction as possible between the trigger and the action. If we go back to that example about the sushi place, if I see the billboard and it says, sushi, all you can eat, $9.99, and then below it says, only within 15 blocks from where you're standing, that's not a great example of that continuity, right? It's like, okay, now I have to do work to actually go and find that place. Opposite of, sushi, all you can eat, and then like a huge arrow pointing down, and it literally points to the door to the sushi place, right? That's an excellent example of creating zero friction flow between the trigger and the action. In terms of digital products, if you're advertising on Facebook, and you're asking people to click on your ad on Facebook, your app or your product should be smart enough to know that people came from Facebook, and you should allow them to kind of sign in with Facebook with one click, creating that minimum friction possible for us to actually kind of take that action. If we're advertising content, have this content display on the main page right away. And this is one thing that really annoys me about Forbes, is that their little quote of the day thingy that just stays on the screen for like 10 seconds or something. And the only reason why it's there is that they want to show me an ad, and they want to make me watch that ad for like 5 seconds or 10 seconds. And while I understand that as part of their monetization strategy, it's also a terrible user experience, because I've obviously clicked on that link from somewhere to go to their website and consume content, and now you're interrupting me with something I don't want to see. So in that case, there's a good chance that people are going to drop off, or get distracted and actually click on the ad and then go consume somebody else's content instead of yours. Again, I mean, you can read some of these actions right here on this page, and they need to be really, really simple, immediate, really low friction, something that is like right in your face right there. If we go to Facebook, people actually have these behaviors now where Facebook is basically the first thing they check. Back in the day, it used to be email. Now it's Facebook. People wake up and that's the first thing they do. They see that little red dot of notifications. That's it. They want to know what's there. And once that emotional trigger has been fulfilled, next thing that happens is that they start scrolling through their feed. And the scrolling is actually an action in itself. It's a very simple action. There is a reason why Facebook feed is constructed in a vertical manner. Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, all of these guys, they all have the same, scroll behavior as the main, simplest way to interact with their product. And that's for a reason. It reduces your need to burn glucose to trying to figure out what decision you need to make next, or where you have to click, like what happens on the app. None of that stuff. You just place your screen anywhere, or place your mouse anywhere on the screen and just start scrolling. That's basically how Facebook has been able to create a very sticky user experience. After we've taken an action, whatever that action is, we need to give people an immediate reward so that they feel that emotional fulfillment. And this actually goes very deep into our brain chemistry and how our brain centers fire when we get pleasure effectively. And pleasure can be a bit of a stretch for scrolling your Facebook feed, for most of us anyways. But as far as your brain is concerned, it does not really differentiate between tasting a really well prepared steak and seeing cat videos. They both fire the same neurons that kind of have our brains perceive pleasure. And catering to that immediate reward is very important, because we are teaching new neurological pathways in our users' minds that every time they perform an action, they feel good. And that's one of the key aspects in creating those sticky experiences. Those rewards can go into several categories. They go into the social category, where if I've liked a comment on Facebook, I want to see who else have liked that comment. If I've posted a comment about something, I want to see if the original author of that post liked it or replied to me, or how many other users have liked it. So there is that kind of very powerful social / acceptance thing going on, where it makes us go back and see what other people think. Resource reward is really simple. This is very tangible. You can appeal to people of all demographics with the resource reward. Maybe your trigger was about allowing people to learn about best secrets of the most successful investors in the world, and your call to action was to download the free ebook. And then obviously you can say things like, it's a $97 value, but I'm giving it to you for free because whatever. So that download action needs to be immediate, and it needs to open, right? That PDF needs to open, and users need to be able to get to that resource, that information value immediately. And last but not least, mastery and competency are actually very important reward motivations that people have. Some of the most persistent, stickiest video games ever created in the history of video games, for example, StarCraft 2, made in 1998, still popular today, and people play it competitively. There are these major competitions in Korea where players basically battle it out playing these video games in front of huge audiences, and they have huge money prizes attached to it. And in order for you to be the best video game player, you need to have real mastery of that game. Those people, their cognitive skills are on the next level. So, products that create that sense of mastery usually do really well. Applies to games, but also applies to a lot of the gamification type products that allows users to progress through levels, through gain experience points, unlock rewards, get badges, all of these things, right? So that it's a internal and external proof that you as a user have achieved something, you've become good at something, and that makes us feel good, and it makes us want to continue to do more and more. And then finally, the investment part of that infinite value loop. This is where the magic happens. After we've gotten our reward, what is it that our product can do to stay in our users' minds? What is it that we can do to make sure that people are actually interested in somehow, using our product again? So we're actually going to break down how Facebook does it on the next page. But the most important part is there needs to be you got to go 95% of the way with the reward, right? And you need to leave that last 5% as the little gap, an intentional gap that is designed to arouse curiosity, that arouse anticipation. What is going to happen next? People that do really well are actually movie directors and people who make TV commercials. TV commercials are actually, they may be short, they may be only 30 seconds, but it's an art and craft of psychological manipulation of the highest order. They've like those directors, they figured out how to keep people's attention and how to arouse their anticipation. And movie directors, the famous, and TV show productions, the famous cliffhangers, right? Going 95% of the way and then cutting into the commercial break at that cliffhanger moment, knowing full well that people are going to sit in their chairs without moving, wait for 5 minutes for commercials to end, and then continue watching that show to actually figure out what happens. And that's called the knowledge gap, and that's a very powerful kind of psychological and emotional driver for people to continue doing what they're doing. Okay, so these are some of the investment type of actions that we can do proactively on our end to make sure that people want to continue using it. So obviously, money is an excellent example of the investment, and we're not talking about classical investment of buying stocks and bonds. We're talking about I've purchased a $9.99 a month membership to website X. Now I've invested my money into having access to this community and these resources. So it actually is enough motivation for me to go back and use it and communicate with these people. Social capital, we've talked about that a little bit, building my followers, right? If I invest my time into social media to post tweets and Instagram posts and all these things, I'm interested in social proof, and I'm interested in having people sign up and follow me and become my friends or whatever. So building that social capital. Then personal data and all these other things, it's sort of self-explanatory. And obviously, the important part is for us to build that loop. So let's take a look at how Facebook does it. So Facebook figured out that the reason why people go on their website is when they feel lonely. And you may not necessarily recognize it on a very kind of conscious level, but whenever people, we're social beings, right? We want to be surrounded by other people. We want to be liked. We want to be accepted. We want to, have friends, and we want our friends to call us. So all of that is part of that. I feel lonely. I need my friends right now. And Facebook figured it out. They know that little red dot, the notification dot, is like the new cocaine of the 21st century. People just want to see that red dot every time they go to Facebook. They are emotionally attached to seeing that notification because it means that someone out there in the world is actually thinking about them. They've posted something for them. They've liked their comment. They like their photo. So whenever people feel lonely, they go to Facebook to connect with their friends and see what other people are doing. And they end up performing that super simple action of scrolling the newsfeed to see what happens. And there's powerful shift happens from trying to connect with people to all of a sudden being entertained. Social media is effectively interruption marketing, right? The best social posts are the ones that we scroll, we stop. It gets our attention. Whatever it is, it gets our attention. It have interrupted this flow of scrolling, and now we're looking at it. We're reading the caption, we're looking at the video, whatever it is. So effectively, the reward is being surprised and entertained at the same time, right? So as I scroll and I see cool things happening on my newsfeed, it kind of interrupts that flow and kind of gets that attention for me. Whenever I see cool posts on Facebook, I am likely to reshare it back to my timeline, tag a friend in it, like it, comment on it, scroll through the comments and see what other people are saying. So that's basically our investment phase. Our investment phase is taking an action on something that we've seen there, which also acts as a trigger because now we have created that anticipation that at some point in the future, someone will see that we've liked it, that we've commented on it, and they will respond to our action in some way. This is where this next loop happens. So we've liked the comment, and we moved on with our lives until 15 minutes later, an hour later, that little notification comes up again saying, Jessica liked your comment. And that acts as the next emotional trigger for us to enter this loop over and over again. And this is how Facebook has built one of the stickiest user experiences of any digital product ever created. Twitter tried to do the same, but they've fallen into a different category of kind of mass news posts. Google Plus tried to do the same, but they've tried to do too many things all at once, and as a result, none of that was actually catering to people's emotional triggers in the way that Facebook does. And that's why, especially because now that Facebook has pretty much everybody online, it's very difficult. It's going to be very difficult for someone else to come in and displace them as the social network that allows people to connect. LinkedIn did it in a slightly different way. They did it as a niche approach. They're like, okay, so Facebook, let it be for our interpersonal communication, and LinkedIn is going to be the same for business communication. But again, because our emotional motivations will be very different between using LinkedIn and Facebook, the approach needs to be different as well, right? So people, like, if you're a full-time employee, you will probably only go on LinkedIn once every 5 years when you're looking for a new job, as opposed to Facebook, right? If you're a full-time employee, you're probably on Facebook every day because you're bored on your, on your job. As a self-employed or an entrepreneur or a business owner, that interaction is probably vice versa. You're probably thinking more about the business networking side of LinkedIn than going on Facebook and wasting your time watching cat videos. So those motivational triggers are very, very different. And if you understand them, you're able to create experiences that work really well and work towards that customer retention. If we go back to my example of that fitness blog and how we saw that rapid drop-off in the cohort analysis on days 2 and 3, this is what that person is not doing. The author of that blog is not loading this next trigger, right? Maybe she doesn't collect people's email addresses so that she can follow up with them later. Maybe a good idea would be to take a very big blog post and break it up into like a 5-part series so that people, have an incentive to go and read it for 5 consecutive days, and so on and so forth, right? If you're building an app, you need to think about this, how you can load this next trigger. This is the difference between, drop off in active monthly, weekly users and keeping that graph growing at a steady pace. And obviously, this is going to be individual on your product. There are some general best practices, and we're going to look at some of them below, and we're talking about cognitive biases there. But obviously, depending on your product, depending on your niche, who your users are, how you load this next trigger is going to be different. Finally, as we understood a lot of these inner workings, how to get people to come back to your product, we can take it a step further by actually using what's called cognitive biases. A cognitive bias is like a short circuit in our psychology that produces certain results in a way that we can use to our advantage as designers, as marketers, as advertisers. And I highly recommend for you guys to also check out Charlie Munger and his work. And there's this website called 25cognitivebiases.com, which breaks down a lot of these really, really cool ways to understand human psychology better. And because these are fairly straightforward, kind of simple, simply described biases, we can learn to use them in our product design to create much, much better experiences. So right now, I just want to focus on 2. And one cognitive bias, and we talked about that just a moment ago, is social proof, right? If we know that other people are doing the same thing, we are considerably more likely to do the same thing, because somehow in our minds it's perceived like we're doing the right thing, right? For better or for worse, crowd mentality, herd mentality, that's part of that social proof. And if we understand that, we can actually use it to our advantage to actually keep people engaged with each other and with our product. And another one is, fear of missing out. That's also cognitive bias. If we think that, we're going to lose an opportunity, we're going to lose something, we're a lot more likely to go after it than if we know that it's always going to be there, right? So sort of like, scarcity marketing, it actually really works, right? So if you tell people, listen, this is a flash sale, it's only going to be available for 4 hours, and after that, it's gone forever, people are more likely to actually go for it than, if you say, yeah, we can come back tomorrow, I'll still be here. Between doing extra work to gain something that we don't have and doing extra work to keep something that we might lose, people are actually considerably more likely to do considerably more work to keep something from losing than to gain new things. So that's a very important thing to keep in mind. Now, finally, I want to talk about something that's called Lollapalooza Effect. And again, in Charlie Munger's work, a Lollapalooza effect is this incredible result of combining 2 or more cognitive biases to create an exponentially compounded result. So if we take our previous example, oh, by the way, you know what? There could be a third bias. We can put in a third bias into the mix called authority influence, right? If we're going to say, famous people do it, we are even more likely to go and do the same thing. Right. So in our example, if we look back and we're going to use the social proof, the authority influence, and the fear of missing out cognitive biases to create a very powerful emotional trigger for people to do something. So, Richard Branson, Drake, and Barack Obama, these are obviously the authorities, and specifically 57 of your Facebook friends use this product or like this page or whatever, whatever that is. And you can follow up with this. So the middle part is, that's our social proof. They're saying, listen, your friends are doing it. And then finally, we're going to add this fear of missing out. We're going to say, listen, you're going to get this free membership or a free trial or, whatever you're giving away. And we're going to say, listen, this offer expires in however much. And when it's gone, it's gone. And you can still go back and use our product, but you're going to have to buy our full membership that costs $59 a month or whatever it is, right? So here's an example of how you can actually use all of these things stacked together to create an experience design and based on behavioral science that is really designed to keep people engaged with your product over and over again. Obviously, once we get them into this loop, we want to keep this loop looping forever. And every time, I call it a value model because every time people pass through this loop, let me just go back to this loop here. Every time people pass through this loop, there's value being created. And there's value being created for both the user and you as the business. Every time people complete this loop, you need to hear some sort of like a cash register ding sound in your heads, because every time this happens, we're creating value for our business. Obviously, the more frequently people pass through this loop, the stronger their new habit is going to be formed, the stronger that behavior is going to be formed, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Once it becomes stronger, it becomes easier for us to load this next trigger and have people go through this loop over and over again. So I really encourage you guys to use some of this behavioral science in your product design. And as we wrap up this particular session, obviously, I'm available for one-on-one sessions. If you want to do a strategy session, if you want to run your idea by me, message me at this email address, contact me on Meetup, message me on Facebook, like my page on Facebook, follow me on Twitter. Let me know how I can help. The very reason I created this group is to help people go from idea to business. And, I'm here to help you guys succeed faster. A quick kind of side note that, from doing this almost for 2 decades, a lot of my experience goes into financial, automotive, and telecom sectors. I've done a lot of consumer e-commerce and managed some of the biggest consumer e-commerce websites in Canada with millions of users per month. I can work with you guys one-on-one, or if you have already a startup formed, I can come in and consult you as a team. Obviously, if you guys are in the GTA or San Francisco areas and your idea shows traction, I'd be more than happy to introduce you to my network that can possibly invest in you at the seed level, Series A level here in GTA and San Francisco. Yeah, and I mean, you can read the rest. I'm here to help. Tons of experience, and absolutely, please do connect with me with whatever questions you may have. And on this note, we're gonna wrap up this session. Thank you very much, everybody who's attended, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you.